स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. अरुणाचल शिवा अरुणाचल शिवा अरुणाचल शिवा अरुणाचल. Namaste, my dear friends. Today I am going to give you a wonderful video. The philosophy of Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi. How he defined various important spiritual terms like natural state, reality, self, heart, mind, ego, mind control, self inquiry, meditation, and many more. So I start with hook. May all those devotees with great love also live long, who, coming to Sri Ramana, get their desires fulfilled and planting his feet in their heart, set all their troubles at rest and attain peace. Natural state. The ever present state is the natural state. The state in which the awareness is firm even when objects are sensed is called the natural state. When through conscious effort to keep the mind free of thought, we are all able to stay in that state, that is the natural state. The mind resting in the self is its natural condition. But instead of that, our minds are resting in outward objects. Without spiritual practice, there cannot be attainment. This is certain. Experience of the natural state during practice is called upasana. When that itself is unswervingly attained, it is called true knowledge. Transcendental awareness is our natural state if we give up the conditioned mind. The natural state is simply being oneself, not knowing anything or becoming anything. If one has realized he is that which alone is and which alone has always been, he cannot describe that state, he can only be that. In the firm natural state, through the silence of the mind, free of all tendencies, no one knows himself as such without any doubts. The environment never abandons you according to your desire. Look at me, I have left home. Look at yourselves, you have come here leaving your home environment. What do you find here? Is it different from what you left? That is the reason for Sankara emphasizing functioning naturally from the self in preference to the transcending awareness of the world in his excellent work Vivek Chudamani. The wrong identification with the body arises because one has lost his moorings and swerved from his original state. He is now advised to give up all these false ideas, to trace the body, mind, or I thought back to the source and remain in his natural state. Forgetfulness of your real nature is the real death. Remembrance of it is the true birth. It puts an end to the successive births. Eternal life is then yours. How does the desire for eternal life arises? Because the present state is unbearably why? Because it is not your true nature. Had it been your true real nature, there would be no desire to agitate you. How does the present state differ from your real nature? Truly, you are spirit. Human beings consider themselves limited, and that is the root of the trouble. The idea is wrong. In sleep, there was no world, no ego, and no trouble. Something wake up from that happy state and says I to that ego, the world appears. It is the rise of the ego that is the cause of the trouble. But trace the ego in its origin and you will reach that undifferentiated happy source, a state which is sleepless sleep. The self is ever there, wisdom only appears to dawn, though it is natural. Peace is your nature. Forgetfulness never overtakes the self. The self is now being confused for the non self, and that makes you speak of forgetfulness of self and absence of peace. You do not acquire happiness. Your nature is happiness. Bliss is not newly acquired. All that is done is to remove unhappiness. These methods do so. Our real nature is liberation, but we imagine we are bound. We thus make strenuous efforts to become free while all the while we are free. Our real nature is liberation, but we imagine we are bound. We thus make strenuous efforts to become free while all the while we are free. Next, Maharshi has explained what is reality. There is no greater mystery than this that being reality, Brahma, ourselves, we seek to gain a reality. We think that there is something hiding our reality and that it must be destroyed before the reality is gained. It is ridiculous. A day will dawn when you will yourself laugh at your past efforts. That which will be on the day you laugh is also here and now. Reality is seen by him who sees the self, but one who has lost the ego and seen the self is none other than a reality. To see him is to be consumed by him. He alone is. If you give up all else and seek him alone, he will remain as the I, the self, that in which all these worlds seem to exist steadily, that of which all these worlds are a possession, that from which all these worlds rise, that that for which all these exist, that by which all these worlds come into existence, and that which is indeed all these. That alone is the existing reality. Let us cherish that self which is the reality in the heart. It is said that reality is real and that the world is an illusion. Again, it is said that the whole universe is an image of reality. How are these two statements to be reconciled? In the in the sadhak stage, practice of spiritual discipline, you have got to say that the world is an illusion. There is no other way because when a man forgets that he is reality, who is real, permanent, and omnipresent, and delude himself into thinking that he is a body in the universe which is filled with bodies that are transitory and labors under that delusion. You have got to remind him that the world is unreal and a delusion. Why? Because his vision, which has forgotten its own self, is dwelling in the external material universe and will not turn inwards into introspection unless you impress on him that all this external material universe is unreal. When once he realizes his own self and also that there is nothing other than his own self, he will come to look upon the whole universe as reality. There is no universe without his self. So long as a man does not see his own self, which is the origin of all, but looks upon the external world as real and permanent, you have to tell him that it is an illusion. You cannot help it. Take a newspaper. We see only the script and nobody notices the paper on which the script is printed. The paper is there. Whether the script on it is there or not. To those who look upon the script as real, you have to say that it is unreal since it rests upon the paper. The wise man looks upon both the paper and script as one. So also with reality and the universe. Now Maharshi explains what is self. In my sight, I only am, and you are not. In your sight, you only are, and I am not. In the sight of the self alone exists and nothing else. In truth, I, you, and all are nothing but the self. Only when the self is gained is permanent, perfect, blissful, peace attained. In this self sovereignty, non dual heaven like, all pervasive, no desire and no fear can exist. Man is always the self and yet he does not know it. Instead, he confounds it with the non self, the body, etc. Such confusion is due to ignorance. If ignorance is wiped out of the confusion will cease to exist and the true knowledge will be unfolded. By remaining in contrast with realized sages, the man gradually loses the ignorance until its removal is complete. The eternal self is thus revealed. Gaze at your own real nature. It is immaterial whether the eyes are open or closed. Everywhere there is only the one, so it is all the same whether you keep your eyes open or closed. If you wish to meditate so on the eye that is within you, it is self because it has no eyes. There is no need either to open or close the eyes. When you attain self knowledge, there will no longer be any ideas about the world. When you are sitting in a room, whether the windows are open or closed, you are the same person, in the same state, in the same way. If you abide in the state of reality, it is all the same whether the eyes are open or closed. It matters little whether external activities go on or not. The self is pure consciousness in sleep. It evolves as I without this. Idam in the transition state and manifest as I and this in the waking state. The individual's experience is by means of I only, so he must aim at realization in the way indicated, that is, by means of the transitional I. Otherwise, the sleep experience does not matter to him. If the transitional I we realize the substratum is found and that leads to the goal. People think freedom is somewhere yonder and should be sought out. They are wrong. Freedom is only knowing the self. Within yourself, concentrate and you will get it. In my sight, I only am and you are not. In your sight, you only are and I am not. In the sight of the self alone exists and nothing else. In truth, I, you, and all are nothing but the self. Just as a river does not continue to flow after its discharge into the ocean, so also person loses all moments after he merges in the self. You cannot by any means escape the self. You want to see reality in all but not in yourself. If all is a reality, are you not included in that all? To abide in the self, you must love the self, the inner self, primeval spirit, eternal, ever effulgent, full and infinite bliss, single, indivisible, whole and living, shines in everyone as the witnessing awareness. The self in its splendor, shining in the cavity of the heart as the subtle, pervasive, yet unmanifest ether illumines this universe like the sun. The self is neither born nor dies, it neither grows nor decays, nor does it suffer any change. When a pot is broken, the space inside it is not. Similarly, when the body dies, the self in it remains eternal. To see a light, no other light is needed. So also the self being self-luminous needs no other means of knowledge. See the self, and ignorance will be found not to exist. The self is the real book. You can glance anywhere in that book. Nobody can take it away from you. Whenever you are free, turn towards the self. Thereafter, you may read whatever you like. Next, Maharshi explains heart, not the physical heart, or this, but the spiritual heart. No one denies that the physical organ heart is on the left, but the heart is synonym of for the self, which I speak of is the seat of consciousness at the right side of the chest. This is my experience and I require no authority for it. Still, you can find confirmation in a Malayalam Ayurveda book and in the Sita Upanishad. In brief, the I thought is the root of all thoughts. The source of the I thought is the heart. I thought or the ego. The heart is not the blood circulation organ. Hridam means this is the center. Thus it stands for the self. The location of the heart is on the right side of the chest and not on the left. The light of consciousness flows from the heart through the Sushumna or eternal channel to the thousand parallel lotus in the crown of the head Sahasrara. From the Sahasrara, consciousness spreads all over the body and then the experience of the world arises. Viewing themselves as different from that consciousness, human beings get caught in the cycle of birth and death. Being consciousness, which is authentic bliss and which is shining in the heart, should be taken to be the target of your attention all times, at all times. Through one pointed buddhi yoga, merging of the mind, worship it in the heart without any forgetfulness and thereby abide steadfastly as that. This alone is the consummation of your life. Heart is another name for reality. It is neither inside nor outside of the body. There can be no in and out for it, since it alone is. This world is not other than the mind. The mind is not other than the heart. Heart is merely another name for the Supreme Spirit, because He is in all hearts. The entire universe is condensed in the body, and the entire body in the heart. Thus, the heart is the nucleus of the whole universe. He whose delusive ego completely subsides and becomes one with existence consciousness will cease from making the effort of stating any action of or karma and will shine in the heart, having attained the natural and peaceful state of bliss. God, the transcendental being, resides in the heart as I, the Om Savrupa, the self which is one's true nature as mere being, free of thought. Among us, the many thousands of divine names given to him in the many different religions and languages, no other name is so perfectly apt and has such true elegance as the name I am. In the center of the cavity of the heart, the soul reality shines by itself as the self in the feeling of I. Reach the heart by divine within yourself, diving within yourself, either with control of breath or with thought concentrated on the quest of self. You will thus get fixed in the self. For those whose attention is focused on the self, only the name I, among the many known names of God, will constantly reverberate in the heart firmament. Once the ego has been destroyed, it will remain center stage as the silent transcendental speech. The entire universe is in the body and the whole body is in the heart. Hence, the universe is contained in that heart. The heart is to the body what the sun is to the world. Just as the sun gives light to the moon, the heart lights the mind. A mortal absent from the heart sees only the mind. Just as the light of the moon alone is seen at night when the sun has set, the mind of the knower abiding in the heart is merged in the consciousness of the heart like the moonlight in daylight. Though the verbal meaning of the term prajna, intelligence, is the mind, the wise know its essential meaning to be the heart. Supreme is only the heart. The distinction between the seer and the seen is only in the mind. For those abiding in the heart, the perception is unitary. When there is a forcible arrest of thoughts by swooning, sleep, excessive joy or sorrow, fear, and so on, the mind goes back to the source, the heart. Such a merger is unconscious and the person is unaware of it. However, when one consciously enters the heart, it is termed samadhi. Hence the difference in names. Because you seek true consciousness, where can you find it? Can you attain it outside of yourself? You have to find it internally. Therefore, you are directed inward. The heart is the seat of consciousness or is the consciousness itself. When the room is dark, you need a lamp to light it. But when the sun rises, there is no need for lamp. Objects are seen without one, and to see the sun no lamp is needed for it is self-luminous. Similarly, with the mind, the reflected light of the mind is necessary to perceive object or the world composed of objects, but to see the heart it is enough for the mind to be turned towards it. Then the mind is lost in it and the heart shines forth. The heart is the center of spiritual experience according to testimony of sages. The spiritual heart center is not an organ of the body. All that you can say is that it is the core of your being, that with which you are identical, whether you are awake, asleep, or dreaming, whether you are engaged in work or immersed in transcendental consciousness samadhi. The questioner asks about the heart's location accepts his bodily existence. It is from this point of view that any reference to a physical body comes to be made. What is indicated is the position of the heart in relation to your identify. Identify. When the schoolboy says, I did the sum correctly, or when he asks you, shall I run and get the book for you? Would he point to the head that didn't the sum correctly, or to his legs that will swiftly get you the book? No, in both cases his finger points out quite naturally towards the right side of his chest, thus giving innocent expression to the profound truth that the source of I-ness in him is there. It is an unerring intuition that makes him refer to himself to the heart in that way. The truth of oneself alone is worthy of being scrutinized and known. Taking it as the target of one's attention, one should keenly know it in the heart. The knowledge of oneself will be revealed only to the consciousness which is silent, clear, and free from the activity of the agitated and suffering mind. Know that consciousness which always shines in the heart as the formless self, it is known by one's being still, without thinking about anything as existent or non-existent. Satsanga, keeping conscious company, will make the mind sink into the heart. If concentration is made with the brain, sensation of heart and headache ensue. Concentration has to be made with the heart, which is cool and refreshing. If you practice self-inquiry, your will reach the heart, which is the self. Go to the source direct and do not depend on borrowed resources. The source is the heart, the self. In the center, interior of the heart cave, reality alone shines as I. That is, it is the feeling of being oneself experienced as I in the heart. It is the feeling of being oneself experienced as I in the heart. Enter into the heart through self-inquiry or by merging the mind with the self or by breath control and become rooted as that. There is no entry as such which we can call mind because thoughts emerge. We assume that there is something from which they emerge and we term that mind. Thinking or the discriminating faculty are mere names. Whether it is ego, mind, or intellect, it is the same. Whose mind is it? Whose intellect it is? It is the egos. Is the ego real? No. We are confused by the ego and call it intellect or mind. When we probe to see what it is, we discover that there is nothing there. After it has thus disappeared, eternal peace remains. The one that thinks is yourself. Let action occur of its own accord. Why associate yourself with the difficulty? When you have to go outdoors, you just lift your feet and go. without thinking about it. Like this, the same, the state becomes automatic, and when necessary, thinking arises and disappears of its own accord. Intuition works when there is no thought, and intuition will guide you. Those who have made big discoveries have made them not when they were anxious about them, but in the stillness by intuition rather than by thinking. What is the mind? If one searches to find out, then there would be no separate entity as the mind. The mind is only a bundle of thoughts. They are dependent on the I thought. Know the I thought to be mind. There is no entity by name of mind because of the emergence of thoughts. We surmise something from which they start. Thus we term mind. He who thinks raises troubles. The real I is silent. Thoughts are the enemy. Thoughts amount to the creation of the universe. In their absence, there is neither world nor God nor creator. Give up thoughts and you need not give up anything else. Thoughts alone make up the mind of all thoughts. The I thought is the root. What is called mind is but the notion I. When one turns within and searches whence the I thought arises, the I vanishes and wisdom's quest begins. All phenomena consisting of names and forms are of the nature of mind alone. The mind turned inward is the self. Turned outward it becomes the ego and all the world. The mind does not exist apart from the self. That is, it has no independent existence. The self exists without the mind, never the mind without the self. Destroy the power of the mind by seeking it. When the mind is examined, its activities cease. As thoughts arise, they should be destroyed then and there in the very place of their origin through inquiry. Are you distinct from your thoughts? Do you exist without them? Yes, but can the thoughts exist without you? The mind functions on account of a single root thought. The I thought it has no existence as a separate entity. No thought will go in vain. Every thought will produce its effort sometime or other. Thought force will never go in vain. The wavering of the mind is a weakness arising from the dissipation of its energy in the shape of many thoughts. When one makes the mind stick to one thought, the energy is conserved and the mind becomes strong, capable of remaining poised in one's practice. The purified mind alone is capable of grasping a method and sticking to its practice. Many fear that with the destruction of the mind, they themselves will cease to exist. But Manunasa, destruction of the mind is nothing to be feared. When we conceive of now as mind is only a combination of rajas, restlessness and tamas, dullness, by their elimination the mind becomes pure. Such a mind is one's own Savrupa, real nature. The activities of one whose mind has been purified by self-attention will continue to be done. He will even appear to do the work with greater attention and involvement, yet he is unaffected and always stays in the felicity of non-dual bliss. Let your standpoint become that of wisdom, steady abidance in the object of meditation. Then the world will be found to be God. Mind is a wonderful force inherent in the self. That which arises in this body as I is the mind. When the subtle mind emerges through the brain and the senses, the gross names and forms are cognized. When it remains in the heart, names and forms disappear. If the mind remains in the heart, the I or the ego, which is the source of all thoughts, will go, and the self, the real eternal I alone, will shine. Where there is not the slightest trace of the ego, there is the self. The ego self appears and disappears and is transitory. Where next term is ego. Maharshi this explains ego in a very nice way. The ego, self, appears and disappears and is transitory, whereas the real self is permanent. Though you are the true self, you actually identify it with the ego self. Look for it, the ego vanishes and the self alone remains. The ego is described as having three bodies, the gross, subtle and causal, but that is only for the purpose of analytical exposition. If the method of enquiry were to depend on ego's form, you may take it that any enquiry would become altogether impossible, because the forms the ego may assume are legion. Therefore, for the purpose of self-enquiry, you have to proceed on the basis that the ego has but one form, namely that of the limited feeling of I-ness. Although the concept of I-ness or I am is by usage known as aham virati, the I thought. It is not really a thought like other thoughts and of the mind, because unlike other thoughts which have no essential interconnection, the I thought is equally and essentially related to each and every thought of the mind. The search for the source of the I thought is not merely the search for the basis of one of the forms of ego, but for the very source from which arises the I amness. The enquiry into the source of the I thought touches the very existence of the ego. Therefore, the subtlety of the ego's form is not a material consideration. From the functional point of view, the ego has one and only one characteristic. The ego serves as a knot between the self, which is pure consciousness, and the physical body, which is inert. The ego is therefore called the knot between consciousness and the inert body. In your investigation into the source of the ego, you have the essential consciousness aspect of the ego. For this reason, the enquiry must lead to the realization of the pure consciousness of the self. Thoughts arise because there is a thinker. The ego is the root thought from which all other thoughts arise. If sought, it will vanish automatically, born of forms, rooted in forms, feeding on forms, even changing its forms itself formless. This ego ghost takes to its heels on inquiry. On the rising of the ego, everything else rises with its subsidence or subside. The ego is therefore all tracking it is way to victory over everything. Discover the real source of the ego by exploring within with keen intellect, by regulating breath, speech, and mind, as one would do to recover a thing which has fallen into the deep well. The ego falls crestfallen when one questions who am I and enters the heart. The moment the ego self tries to know itself, it changes its character. It begins to partake less and less of the inert in which it is absorbed, and more of the consciousness of the self. To ask for the omission of your name is as much egoism as to desire its inclusion. In the inquiry, who am I? The I is the ego. The question really means, what is the source or origin of this ego? Be what you are. All that is necessary is to lose the ego. That which is always there. Even now you are that. The blank which occurs for some after long practice of the inquiry is seen by you. You are there to see the blank. What do you wait for? You have fallen into the snare of the ego. Therefore, leave off all this verbiage, be as you are. Your duty is to be and not to be this or that. The method is summed up in the words be still. What does stillness mean? It means giving up the notion that I am so and so. Meditation is possible only if the ego is kept up. There is the ego and the object meditated upon. The method is therefore indirect because the self is one. Seeking the ego, that is its source. The ego disappears and what is left is the self. This method is the direct one. What is fear? It is only a thought. First, the ego rises and sees the object as external. Anything external implies the existence of the seer within. Seeking its source will eliminate doubt and fear. Not only fear, all other thoughts centered around the ego will disappear along with it. It is the ego that is the cause of all the world, and if the ego is dissolved by inquiry, everything crumbles and reality of the self alone remains. Find out to whom all questions occur. By conducting this inquiry, fear and anxiety will disappear. They are impermanent. Do not pay attention to them. When there is knowledge of duality, fear arises. Fear only comes when you think that there are others apart from you. If you direct your mind and there will be no end of them. It is a laborious task to pluck the leaves of a tree only by one. The I feeling is the root of all thoughts. If you destroy the root, the leaves and branches will either wither away instead of forming bad habits and taking medicine for them. It is better to see that such bad habits are not formed. Find First find out whether there is an I in you or not. It is this ego, I, Ahankara that gets these thoughts, and as a result, you feel weakness. Therefore, find out how identification with the body takes place. Body consciousness is the cause of all misery. When you conduct the inquiry into the ego I, you will find out its source and you will be able to remove it. Next is Maharshi explains mind control. Those attached to objects and having endless thoughts due to the strength of latent tendencies find it difficult to control the mind. One should control the fickle mind by restraint of breath. Then it would, like a tethered animal, cease to stray. Thoughts are controlled by regulation of breath. Then one abides at their source. Watching the flow of breath with the mind is restraint of it. Such watching, if constant, steadies the breath. If the mind lacks the necessary strength for constant watching of breath, then restriction of breath by Hatha Yogi practices is suggested. Explaining 1 unit of time, inhaling 1 unit time, and retaining breath for 4 units of time purifies the channels through which breath flows. Breath control comes gradually when the channels are purified. When such regulation becomes permanent, it becomes natural. The wise regard the giving up the notion I am the body as exhaling. Self inquiry is inhaling and abiding in the heart as natural breath subsidence. The mind also gets controlled by repetition of sacred syllables. When the syllables, the mind and breath becomes one. The merging of the mind and the breath is meditation and it leads to the natural state when it becomes deep and firm. By keeping daily the company of great ones, those enlightened or sages always rooted in consciousness, one's mind gets merged in the source. The mind becomes quiescent by regulating of breath like a bird caught in a net. This this is a means of mind control. Mind and breath expressing themselves as consciousness and action are only two branches of the same power. Mind is the rider and the breath is the horse. Pranayama, pranayama breath control is a check on the horse. By that check, the rider is checked. It may be done first a little. Watching the breath is one way to do it. The mind is abstracted from other activities and engaged in watching the breath. That controls the breath and in turn the mind. Thought and respiration are both different aspects of the same individual life current upon which both depend. Breath control is meant for one who cannot directly control his thoughts. It serves as a brake, serves a car. A floating body does not readily sink unless some means are adopted for doing so. Pranayama, breath control, makes the mind quiescent. The mind must be alive and meditation pursued unremittingly even when at pace it sinks into the heart. It is necessary to be aware that alert while controlling the thoughts, otherwise it will lead to sleep. Next comes the most important teaching of Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, that is the self-inquiry. This is the direct method to realize the self. Attention to one's own self, which is ever shining as I, the one in undivided and pure reality, is the only wreck with which the individual who is deluded by thinking I am the body can cross the ocean of unending births. Reality is simply the loss of ego. Destroy the ego by seeking its identity. Because the ego is no entity, it will automatically vanish and reality will shine forth by itself. This is the direct method where all other methods are done only by retaining the ego. In those paths there arises so many doubts and the eternal question who am I remains to be tackled finally. But in this method the final question is the only one and it is raised from the beginning. No spiritual practice are necessary for engaging in this quest. The inquiry into the self is inclusive of faith, devotion, knowledge, yoga, and all the traditional paths. Joy and pain are the attributes of the ego. When by self inquiry you realize that you are not that seat, the ego, where is the pleasure or pain for you? Your real nature transcends all such feelings. So the benefit of self-inquiry is tangible in the shape of the escape from all the ills and sorrows of life. What more could one want? One who is always stationed in the self will not be disturbed even in the midst of a crowd. Such a one has no need or desire for solitude. Knowing the self means being the self. Seek your source, find out from where the thought I springs or rises. Self inquiry is not the mind's inspection of its own contents. It is tracing the mind's first mode, the I thought, to its source, which is the self. The very purpose of self inquiry is to focus the entire mind on its source. Let go the passing thoughts and hold on to the unchanging self. Self inquiry alone can reveal the truth that neither the ego nor mind really exist and enables one to realize the pure undifferentiated being of the self. Having realized the self, nothing remains to be known. Enquire until there is no one left to enquire. When thoughts arise, one should not pursue them, but should inquire to whom do they arise. It does not matter how many thoughts arise. As each thought arises, one should inquire with diligence to whom has this thought arisen. The answer that would emerge would be to me. Thereupon, if one inquires, who am I? The mind will go back to its source, and the thought that arose will become quiescent. With repeated practice in this manner, the mind will develop the skill to stay in its source. When the mind that is subtle goes out through the brain and the sense organs, the gross names and forms appear. When it stays in the heart, the names and forms disappear. Not letting the mind go out but retaining it in the heart is what is called inwardness. Letting the mind go out of the heart is known as externalization. Thus, when the mind stays in the heart, the I, which is the source of all thoughts, will go, and the self, whichever exists, will shine. Whatever one does, one should do without the egoity I. If one acts in that way, all will appear as the nature of the Shiva God. Strenuously endeavor to know the self, develop the introspective attitude. Constantly put before the mind the query, who am I? The self inquiry is not the critical study of the scripture. When the source is searched for and found within, the ego gets merged in it. For all thoughts, the source is the I thought. The mind will merge only by self inquiry. You are the mind, or rather, you think you are the mind. The mind is nothing but thoughts. Behind every particular thought, there is a general thought which is I, that is yourself. Let us call it the first thought. Stick to this I thought and question it to find out what it is. I do not say that you must go on rejecting every thought. If you cling to the I thought, when your interest keeps you to that single idea, other thoughts get rejected and automatically they vanish. Self inquiry is not intellectual, it is the inner quest that takes you prior to the mind and intellect. Frequently, if not constantly, question and search within. If you go the way of your thoughts, you will be carried away by them and will find yourself in an endless maze. Enquire for whom is their distraction. It will not be difficult after a little practice. If the attempt is made, it will eventually be found not so difficult. All doubts will cease when the doubter and the source have been found. There is there is no use removing doubts. If we clear one doubt, another doubt will arise and there will be no end to doubt. But if the doubter is found, all doubts will cease. You are told to hold fast to the I. If that is done, the eternal will reveal itself. The vichara or inquiry which you are making, that is its presence in the life of those who practice it regularly. In itself, the Guru's or God's grace. You say I and yet you say you don't know the I. Can anyone be ignorant of himself? Is not that ludicrous? In the case of the ever present, inescapable I, how can you be ignorant? The result of self inquiry is the cure for all sorrows. It is the highest of all results. Self inquiry itself is most meritorious and purifying. Whatever be the means adopted, you must at least return to the self. So why not abide in the self here and now? To be a spectator of or to regulate about, speculate about the other world. The self is necessary. Therefore, they are not different from the self. Even the ignorant man, when he sees the object, sees only the self. So I end the video here. Thank you, my dear friend, for watching and listening this wonderful thought. Thanks a lot. Please like, comment, and share the video and subscribe my channel so that I may continue giving you these wonderful videos for your self realization and leading to liberation. Thank you. Namaste. Namaste.